Okay, we will call to order the North Broward Hospital District Special Board of Commissioners meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 18th. If I could have the roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Urey,
Here?
Commissioner Wellens,
Here.
Commissioner Klein,
Here.
and Commissioner Gregoire.
Okay, I will start us with the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, did we have any public comments?
No, sir, I don't believe they are.
Anybody? No?
We do.
You?
Former Commissioner Kobo.
All right.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. How are you today? You had a nice weekend. I wanted to ask a question because I was cleaning out my garage and going over some things, legal opinions of the general counsel and attorney general, excuse me, not general counsel. When is this board going to request or require the legal department to provide the accountability of expenditures for the legal department? We used to get that on a quarterly basis, and it would say all of the law firms that were referred to, not specifics, just general terms, managed care, litigation, malpractice, and what is the true cost of the legal department these days? Public hasn't seen that in a very, very long time. And according to the Attorney General, that's part of your duties, and the lack of transparency that's going on. So I really appreciate if you kind of, from a former commissioner and from a taxpayer, that report I think is very valuable for you guys to see as well as the public.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No, sir.
Okay. This special meeting was called, if everyone remembers, to evaluate candidates for the two independent seats on the Audit Committee. Just to refresh each of your memory and perhaps even inform you at least of some of the history here, these two seats have been open for quite some time, and that is obviously an important element of the independence of the Audit Committee, but also an important element of our job here under our charter. The process of what I was going to do is have, if I could, have Nigel come up, or is Nick here? Nick Tarver?
Yeah, I am.
What I think would be helpful is one of the two of you, and if it's you, Nick, that would be better to just remind everybody here in terms of what the process was and how we got to this point, and how people were appropriately vetted and so on. That would be, I think it'd be helpful for everybody to know how we got to this point, and that we did it by the process that the board approved.
Based on the process that the board had created, the 6 people that applied for the position of the external audit committee member was sent to my office for review. We did a review of the basic background that HR does on any candidates that they would do. Then we also did a more in-depth review of that, and looked at, ensured that all their licensure was, any representations made on their resumes were accurate, and did a deeper dive into their background, and then provided that information individually to each one of you.
Okay, and this was obviously appropriately noticed. I know the application process, if you will, was open for quite a long time. There were, do you have any idea how many applicants there were, or at least people that inquired?
I'd have to defer to Human Resources. All they passed along were the applicants that they deemed qualified for the position.
So something more than the folks that are here, but the folks that were that are here was all of the folks that had met at least the minimum qualifications and were still interested in being considered for the position.
That is correct,
Okay.
Commissioner Urey.
All right, so hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review the resumes and so on. What I think would be good is if we got some input, maybe, I don't know if, Nick, you have any input in just generally in terms of the folks that are here, or if Nigel, you maybe wanted to kind of just bring us up to speed on what conversations you guys have had and so on.
Yeah. So basically, I had a short discussion with all the candidates, and just to keep them abreast of the process and so forth. And firstly, I noticed that a couple of candidates are here, and I just want to thank them very much for applying for the position and their willingness to serve on a voluntary basis for the Audit Committee member. I actually spoke to them, and I really was enlightened by the impression I got from two members, particularly because of their willingness to serve, and also they're located out of Broward County, which add enhancement to our Audit Committee, and their ability to answer all the questions that I've talked to them about during our time when we spoke. And those are Mr. Petkus, the gentleman I spoke to. And the reason is that they're quite accessible, and again, they're not here. And also Mr. Scott Porter. I noticed Mr. Harold Anderson, that's right, is here as well. But we haven't had much conversation regarding that. But there's two that I mentioned. We have had a number of conversations. I felt very comfortable in that they will do a tremendous job in the Audit Committee. And that's my impression that I'm willing to lay out to you.
All right, just to remind everyone then, the board approved a process, but also a minimum of one of these folks needs to be a CPA. I was happy to see that not only that there was one, there were actually several, that at least were interested in being considered. And there's, at least in an attempt to try to be conscientious of everyone's time and the unfortunate demands that we have, being only 4 people on a 7-person board with a 4-person quorum. One of the aspects of our process would entail an interview of the board. Should we decide to move some candidates forward, and I'm trying again, and I'm perfectly fine if it's the will of this board to consider candidates and then to decide whether we want to interview them later, or if the candidates that we want to consider are happen to be here, I'm happy to allow anyone to answer questions. But let's at least just be mindful of having some form of conversation here. And it sounds like, I don't know how many of the candidates are actually here.
I believe 3 candidates.
3 of
Porter is down here, Mr. Beck.
Okay.
Petkus is
I know Mr. Porter had been here the last time we interviewed candidates, so I'm impressed that you're waiting it out. But let me get feedback from everyone here. If there's questions, if you have questions of Nigel, if we want to make some comments about any of the individual folks.
I'll kick the party off. Sure. I've had a couple conversations with Nigel. I have spoken to Nick. I think it would be very inappropriate, to be honest with you, to change the process that we had in place. The process we had in place was to review these candidates, hear from Nigel, hear from Nick. If this board felt that they could narrow the choices down from the candidates here, then we would, at a later date, bring those candidates back for a formal interview. I think that would be totally inappropriate to interview candidates that were here. It wouldn't be fair to candidates that did not come. I think it would be outside of our practice. This is challenging enough, but with 4 people on this board, I think it's really important that we stick to a process and a policy that is reasonable and has been laid out in previous meetings as well as in our policy book. So I would not want to see us violate from that.
I agree. And the only other interview process I've been through, we had one candidate at a time. We didn't have them in the room with each other, I think that's a disadvantage for the second and third candidates. So I would like to interview anyone we deem qualified, but not at this meeting.
Okay,
All right. Thanks.
thank you. Well, just so we're clear then, what we're doing is, at this point, step 4 in the process. Let me just read it so that we're clear on what our process states. The board shall review the applicants and the information provided by the chief ethics officer and shall determine which applicants, if any, should be invited for an interview with the board at a subsequent meeting. Broward Health staff shall be responsible for scheduling interviews with the applicants based upon the board's availability. So at this point, what we would be considering is who it is we wanted to bring back at a to be scheduled, I guess we could do special meeting to interview candidates. I will request that we make ourselves available swiftly because we have a lot of responsibilities, and this happens to be a fairly significant issue that was raised by our external auditors to me some time ago. So filling these 2 positions is a very, very critical component, and it becomes especially important if for any reason we can't identify 2 folks from the folks that have applied thus far, because we're going to have more responsibility to find other folks to consider. So, any comments on that?
Yes, and if I can opine on that, I think what would make sense in the interest of efficiency is to identify our top candidates, as we've done previously with other selection categories where we were looking at the CEO candidates, for example. And to the extent we have some consensus on which of the candidates we'd like to interview, that may allow us to conduct interviews very shortly. So, to me, I think the next step would be for us to each set forth our top 2 candidates from among those that have been proposed. Like Commissioner Wellens, I've had discussions with our executive team with regard to the candidates. I think I've formulated an opinion as to which ones I think are the top 2 candidates. So perhaps we use that as the next step and then decide from there as to when the interviews could take place.
Okay. Anyone else?
So I'm happy to start that if you'd
Sure.
like. Is there agreement that that's what we'd like to do now?
Yes.
We'll identify our top 2 candidates?
Sure.
So just coincidentally, I have the same top 2 candidates that were mentioned, Mr. James Petkus and Mr. Scott Porter. I note that each of them are indeed CPAs. They each have been certified public accountants for roughly 38 or more years, appear to have tremendous experience, not only in the accountancy field, but in the case of Mr. Petkus in the healthcare field. From what I understand, there's no conflicts that would prevent them from serving, so they appear to be well qualified, have the background that we need. And I agree with what Nigel mentioned. I think it was Nigel mentioned that neither one resides in Broward County. One's in Palm Beach County, one's in Miami-Dade County. So I think that gives us an added element of independence for being outside the county. So those would be my top 2 choices.
And if I could, I have my notes from the first time that we tried to do this, and I have the same 2, James Petkus and Scott Porter. So those would be my 2
Okay.
choices.
Mr. Wellens?
I actually have 2 different candidates. One lives in the area, and one lives out for different reasons. Mr. Whitson and Mr. Rosenberg.
Okay. Well, I share the view of Commissioner Gregoire and Commissioner Klein. I had Mr. Porter and Mr. Petkus as my finalists, if you will, or folks that I thought were best positioned for this role. So what I guess that means is the results, Mr. Nyamura, are the 2 candidates most selected.
Yes, the two
Mr.
most...
Porter and Mr. Petkus.
Correct.
Okay. Would it be possible for, and I don't know obviously what their availability is, but if we could perhaps be able to reach an agreement on when we might be available as a body, maybe 1 or 2 dates while we're together and have an opportunity to speak about that. Great if people prefer to have an opportunity to look at their calendars and work with staff to identify a date to come together. Again, I just can't stress enough the necessity of doing that sooner rather than later. So,
Well, perhaps we can do that even sooner. I mean, since both of those candidates are here, could we conduct the interview today if they're amenable, or would that have to be another date?
well, that was what I
Not
was saying.
noticed.
That was what I was saying earlier.
Not
but
noticed
I,
for the interviews for today. So the
Okay.
public wouldn't have noticed that they would be interviewed. And then is it the understanding of the board that only 2 people are going to be noticed and Commissioner Wellens people are not, interviewed and Commissioners Wellens are not?
Well, I think there's a consensus of the board, so I'm going to go with the consensus
So
of the
just the
board.
2?
I think that's the way we've done it in the past. I think that's what we established, that if, that we would come. It doesn't mean that we have 2 that we're going to fill both slots. I think there's clear consensus of the board, so I think we interview those 2 candidates and see where we are. I'll let you know that I can conduct the interview next week, but I don't think Commissioner Klein is in town. Is that not the case, or is that?
Correct. I'll be returning, I'll be available beginning April 26th.
And I'll be out of the country from April 27th through May 10th, but I will be in Florida May 11th through the morning of the 18th, in which case I'm heading out of town again. So that leaves that week, 11th of May through the 18th.
okay. I will make sure that I'm available. So,
Who
Commissioner
should we
Klein.
report I don't know my conflicts in this case. Who should I report my available?
I will be in touch with all of you.
Okay.
So, just so that everyone's clear, we're looking at the week of May 11th. Is that correct? I don't know what day that is.
I'll tell you right now, because I know that I have an early morning flight out on the 18th.
May 11th is a Friday.
Oh, okay, all right. So May 11th is a Friday. So
Because I return on the 10th from Europe, so I could do it on the 10th. So I could do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday the following week. The 18th, I'm on a flight at 8:30 in the morning out to LA.
Let's just keep it simple. The week of the 14th. I guess the 14th through the 17th.
That's fine.
One day between Monday and Thursday. It can be most any time of the day for me. I'll figure out how to be available. It's too important to not. So, and then what we'll do is just try to coordinate for
Yes, sir.
that week, and you'll get us all on the same page.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we
Excellent.
apologize to you gentlemen for having to drag you back again, but we'll be here too.
Okay.
And thank you for being here today.
Yeah. That was all the business for this special meeting. So if I could have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. Thank you.